Hey guys, Miss Bohart here. Today we are going to continue on with our measures of the center and using our statistics and trying to figure out how to do this using a box plot, histogram, and box and whisker set. So let's go ahead and jump on in. All right, so today we're going to take what we have already learned, which is about our mean, median, mode, and range, and use that when it comes to different types of graphs. Okay, remember our mean was the average. We add all of those numbers up and divide it by the total digits to get an average. Our median, the middle number. Remember, when we set up our data, it has to be in ascending order. So that's the smallest number to the largest. And the median is that number smack dab in the middle. And then mode is the number that appears the most. And then we have range, which is the difference between our smallest number and our largest number. So we're going to, again, take the information that we've already learned about and apply it to this new skill. So today we're going to be looking at histograms, dot plots, and box and whisker plots. Okay, so a histogram looks very familiar. It's kind of like a bar graph, okay? But the difference between a bar graph and a histogram is that the bars touch in a histogram. So when you're creating a histogram, make sure your bars are touching, okay? In a dot plot, just like it sounds, you're using dots to show your data. And then in your box and whisker plot, you have a set of data that you have to find some different things. You have to find your minimum number, which is your smallest number, your lower quartile, your median, your upper quartile, your max, which is your largest number. Now we're going to be going into more detail of these individually, so make sure to stick along. All right, so before we get started, there are a few links here that are some great resources on histograms, line plots, dot plots, and box plots. So if you don't quite understand it, go ahead and go to one of these links and watch a little bit more information on these different graphs. Let's start with some dot plots. And again, here we have dot plots where we have dots representing our data. Okay, now in the previous lesson we had a set of numbers. Here our set of numbers are represented by dots. Okay, so it's asking us to calculate the mean and the median. So if I am looking at this, okay, what is another word for mean? Average. Okay, what's another word for median? Middle. Very good. So now, before we go ahead and do this, we've always talked about putting our data in ascending order. So we're going to continue on with that. Let's go ahead and convert this dot plot into a list of numbers in ascending order. That means starting with our smallest and making it up to our largest. So each time that I write the number that the dot represents, I'm going to cross it out so that I don't use it more than once. So I've got 31. I've got 3 32s. So I'm going to put all 3 of them. Got 2 33s. 2 34s. 36 and 38. Okay, so I am going to use this set of data in order to find the average. So remember, in the average, we add all of these numbers together and we divide it. So I'm going to add these numbers together. I got 31 plus 32 plus 32 plus 32 plus 33 plus 33 plus 34 plus 34 plus 36 plus 38. Okay, which gives me a total of 306. Now, remember the very important part, we've got to divide by the total digits. So we can count those digits or we can count the dots because remember, each dot represents a digit. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. So we're going to divide by 10. When we divide that by 10, we get we get when we divide that by that total number, 30 and 6/10. Okay, so we're not actually looking at these numbers down below, but we do get 30 and 6/10. And whenever you're doing this, you can have a decimal. Okay, so let's look at and calculate the middle. Remember, the middle or the median is the number smack dab in the middle. Okay, so if I'm looking here and I know I have 10 dots and it's an even number, so I'm going to have two numbers in the middle. Okay, so what two numbers end up in the middle? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then so we've got 4 on both sides. So 33 and 33 both end up in the middle. So we obviously know that the median is going to be 33. Now, if those numbers were different, we would add them up together and find the average or the mean of the median there. Okay, so we've done this one. Let's go ahead and try this one. Pause this and I want you to try B on your own. Okay, remember the first thing you need to do is put your set of data in ascending order. Now I'm looking at this and I see that this number line does not have all of its numbers. Okay, so between 66 and 68, what would that missing number be? 67, very good. And then we would have 69, 71, 73. So now we have all those missing numbers. It's going to be easy for us to set up that list of data. Okay, so first I'm going to start in ascending order. That is my smallest number to my largest number. So I'm going to start with my 67. So I've got 3 of those, 67, 67, 67. Okay, and then I've got 4 68s, 68, 68, 68, 68. So I've got all 4 of those written down. I've got 3 69s. 71 and a 74. Okay, so first thing I need to do is calculate my mean. And then what is the key word for that? Our average. Very good. So let's add up all of those numbers and divide by the total digits. We've got 7 times 3 to 1 plus 6. So I get that total of 825. Okay, and then we've got to divide by that total number. So how many total numbers do I have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we're going to divide by 12. And we get 68 and 75 hundredths. Okay, next we're going to calculate that mean. And remember, the mean is the middle number. So looking at this, remember we divided by 12. That's an even number. So we know that 2 numbers are going to end up in the middle. All right, so let's go ahead and figure out what 2 numbers are going to end up in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side. So these 2 end up in the middle, and we would add them together and then divide by 2. We find the average of those. But since they're the same number, we know that our median is going to be the same, which is 68. Okay, so that was dot plots. Let's go ahead and talk about some histograms here. Okay, so Allie works at a clothing store and is responsible for inventory. The table shows the frequency of clothing items in specific price ranges. Drag the prices below to create a histogram of data. Now, when we're talking about histograms in data, we need to make sure that we also have labels on everything. Okay, so as you can see here, we have the title of the graph, and then we have frequency, which is going to be our label on our y-axis there, and then we have the price, which is the label on my x-axis there if we're thinking in terms of the coordinate plane. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, we're just looking at the histogram. Remember, with the histogram, our bars must touch. Okay, so starting at this first one, see. So we have 15, 0 to 15. So I'm going to go back up to the table. How many was under 0 to 15? 9. So I'm going to draw this bar up to 9. Now I don't see the physical number 9, but I do see that midway mark in between 10 and 8. Okay, so because a lot of your graphs are going to have skip numbers. So you have to know what that represents. And we're going to try to make our bar look as good as possible, but it doesn't have to be perfect. None of us are perfect here. Okay, so looking at this, now we're going to go on to the 16 to 31. So what is the frequency of 16 to 31? 4. So we're going to take this bar and we're going to move it up to 4. So we now have that bar as 4. Okay, now let's move to the next one, 32 to 47, which is also 4. So that one's going to go right up against it. Next one is 48 to 63, which is 5. So that one's going to be a little bit taller, but it's going to be halfway there. And then our last one, 64 to 79, there are 7. So we're going to draw that one up to 7. Okay, so remember, again, our histograms are where those bars touch. Now, we took the data and we put it in the histogram this time, but you also need to be aware of how to take it from the histogram and then put it into your frequency table as well, okay? So let's look at this, and now we're going to use our histogram in order to answer some questions. Mr. Dial surveyed his students to see how many minutes they had spent on social media that night before. Use the results in the box histogram to drag the correct answers and write in each box. So if I am looking at this, we're not gonna worry about dragging numbers or whatever, but we are gonna actually do the math and figure out what it's asking us to do. Okay, so before we get started, we're looking at this histogram and we see our labels, we see our title, and then we see all these bars, but we may not know what these bars stand for. So what we're gonna do before we go into these questions is figure out what each of these bars stand for. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, for the number of minutes, and that's the frequency, which is the number of students that did that, 0 to 9. How many students had 0 to 9 of minutes? 4, very good. So I'm just gonna write a 4 on top of that because it's easier for me to see that. What about from 10 to 19? 7. What about 20 to 29? 9. What about 30 to 39? 5. And then 40 to 49 is 3. And again, we're just kind of seeing where it lands over here. Remember, they're skipping over, they're counting by 2, so we should know the number that falls in between those. Now that we have our numbers in it, let's go ahead and look over here and finish our data and answer these questions. How many total students did he survey? So remember, when we're trying to find the total, what operation are we using? Addition. We're going to add all those up. So we've got 4 plus 7 plus 9 plus 5 plus 3, and that equals 28. So he surveyed 28 because each bar stands for their own. Okay. How many students use social media for at least 20 minutes? Okay, so on this one, it's saying at least 20 minutes. So that's 20 minutes or more. So we're looking at all of those. So really, we find our 20 minutes and we've got to figure out which one is 20 minutes or more. So we know we have 9, 5, and 3. So if I add those up, what do I get? 9 plus 5 plus 3. So how many? 17, yes. Okay, how many students use social media for less than 30 minutes? So we would find our 30 minutes here and we would go less. Now it doesn't want to include 30, it says less than. So we are really looking at our 20 through 29, 10 through 19, and 0 through 9. So we have our 9, 7, and 4. So what is 9 plus 7 plus 4? Which would be 20. Okay, so we just used our data in order to answer questions. Let's continue on with our next graph. All right, the next thing we are going into is talking about box and whisker plots. These are the most fun. I love box and whisker plots. Okay, so on this, we're looking at 5 number summaries for 2 sets of data given below. Use the information to drag the given pieces in order to make the box plot represent the data. Okay, now when we're talking about box plots, we have different things. We have our minimum, quartile 1, medium, quartile 3, and our maximum. Another name for quartile 1 is your lower quartile, and another name for quartile 3 is your upper quartile. So right here, we're just going to be practicing on how to draw these box plots, okay? In the next one, we're going to practice on how to figure out how to get these numbers. All right, so if I'm looking at this, we always start with our minimum number, okay? So on this minimum number, we have 22. So I would go find 22 on the number line. I'm going to put a dot for 22. Okay. Next, we have quartile 1, which is 24. I'm going to put a dot there. Our median, 29. Remember, these are skipping numbers, so we know that in between 28 and 30 is 29. Okay, in between our quartile 3 or my upper quartile, it's going to be 32. And then my maximum is 35. Now, it's a lot more than just putting dots there. Okay, as you see down here, we have a lot of boxes and lines and what have you. So we're going to use these dots in order to make that. Now, what you do on on your minimum, you draw a line, maximum, draw a line, and then on your median, draw a line. Okay, now when we're looking at this, we need to connect our quartile 1 or lower quartile up to our quartile 3 or upper quartile. So when I'm doing that, I'm just going to draw a box that connects the two. Okay, so we now have our box, and then we've got to connect our minimum to that box and our maximum to that box. So I'm going to go ahead and do it in a different color so you can kind of see how it looks like. We've got our minimum line to our lower quartile. We've got our box that connects our quartiles and our median. Remember, our median is that middle number of the data. And then to our maximum. So we have a box and whisker plot here. I want you to go ahead and take a minute, try to create the box and whisker plot on this other one. Okay, so we're going to start with our minimum, which is 13. I'm going to draw my dot, my quartile 1, which is 14. Have my dot, median, which is our middle number, 18, quartile 3, which is 19, and my maximum, which is 25. Now remember, on my minimum, draw my line. On my maximum, draw my line. Quartile 1, all the way to quartile 3, we create that box. And then we also have to draw a line on the median. Now we can't let that box just float in the middle. So we've got to connect it to our minimum and our maximum. So now we know that we have, if we just had this picture, we would be able to pick out these numbers because we know that first line is going to be our minimum. This first line in the box part is our quartile 1. That middle line is your median. That last line there is quartile 3. And that last line here is our maximum. Okay, so we just practiced creating those box plots just from the numbers given to us. Now we're going to practice on how to actually find those numbers. All right, so looking at this, each box plot shows the distribution, oh, I can't speak, sorry, of the speed of 3 Olympic runners. Drag the missing pieces of information to match each table. Okay, so if I am looking at this, remember, we just practiced on how to make them. So now we're going to practice to figure out what numbers each of these stand for. So they gave us our minimum, which is 37. And remember, guys, if you need to come through and put your numbers here so you know what they are, do it. All right. So our quartile 1 is that first edge of the box, which is 39. Our median is that middle line. What is? Oh, that one lands in the middle here. So what is halfway between 39 and 40? 39 and 5/10. Now it's okay to have a decimal, right? Not everything's pretty single numbers. And then we have quartile 3, which gets you on 42. And then our maximum number is where that leaves off, which is our 44. Okay, take a minute and try this next one on your own. We have our minimum, which is 37. Remember, our minimum's right here. Our median, which is that center line, 41. And then our maximum, try to use different colors for y'all so y'all can see where I'm getting these from. Our maximum falls in between 42 and 44, which is 43. Very good. All right, let's look at this last one. We have our minimum. Now I see that that one falls in between these two. So it's in between 36 and what this number would be 37. So it's in between 36 and 37. 36 and 5/10. We've got our quartile 1. Remember, my quartile 1 is that first line, which gives me 38. The median is 40, which they already gave us that. We have our quartile 3, or upper quartile, which is in between two of these. So it's in between 41 and 42, which gives us 41 and 5/10. And then our maximum, which would be 44. Okay, guys. We just practiced a bunch of different things. We looked at dot plots, we looked at histograms, we looked at box and whisker plots. Now there's always a lot more things that can go into that with pulling out data, and we'll be practicing that as the days go on. Okay, so make sure if you don't quite understand this, go to the first part of the slide here where I have all of these links that can bring you to videos that will help you understand them even more. Good work today, guys. Bye.